Ooh, this guy is good. Whoa! Don't ram me, bruh. Alright, dude, let's do it. Hey, bro, watch your jet. Watch your jet, bro. Watch your jet! You know, whoa! Good grief! Did I hit that tree? I'm pretty sure I did. Oh, man. That was a good dogfight, man. GG. Howdy folks, Sabre here. Welcome back to the channel. Today I am going to be taking to the skies and fulfilling my need for speed. What you're looking at here is the CL-13 Mk.5 Sabre. The Sabre that, in my opinion, is the best in the game. The thing that sets the CL-13 apart from the other Sabres is its engine. The Avro Canada Orinda 10 jet with 2,790 kilograms of thrust, almost 2,800, and only 1,160 kilograms. To compare that with the American Sabre with its General Electric J47-GE27 jet, it's only 10 kilograms heavier and has almost 200 more kilograms of thrust than the American Sabre. Ay, ay, ay. So with that said, it's able to slightly outpace the American and Japanese Sabres. Just enough extra power to outpace it in the long run. Yeah, impressive, right? Well, without further ado, we're going to be taking our sneaky breaky stealth ammo today and putting the CL to the test. Alright, let's get into it. Alrighty! So welcome to the second Battle of El Alamein, or the third Battle of El Alamein, if you notice the 1953 jets. The Sabres and MiGs against Sabres and MiGs. I'm serious. There are some battles where I'm in my CL-13 Sabre, and there's GDR MiGs on our team, and we go against American Sabres and Soviet MiGs, or Russian MiGs, whatever you want to call them. But anyway, the CL-13, it is a Canadian-German jet fighter, which is based off of the North American F-86 Sabre. And the reason I call it Canadian-German is because it served with the German Luftwaffe, but it was built in Canada by Avro Canada. So there are a few notable improvements to the CL-13 over the original American F-86. Most notable improvement, as I mentioned in the intro, is the engine. I'm not going to mention it again since I just mentioned it, but it is quite an improvement with a slightly higher top speed and a very, very decent acceleration rate. So yeah, now let's talk about the faction that the CL-13 plays in. It's a German fighter, and I'm not sure what to call this faction. It's not really Axis, but per se. I guess it could be with the recent changes, so I'm just going to call it Axis. It quite literally is Axis versus Allies, which is rather ironic given its post-World War II setting. But anyway, it is essentially the Germans, Italians, occasionally the Japanese, against the Americans, the British, the French, and the Russians. So it's quite an interesting combination. Now, to answer an interesting question as to why it seems now obviously no one faction ever gets a 100% win rate. That would just be ridiculous. You would have to be insanely good. Or let me rephrase that. Your faction would have to be insanely good to get 100%. But but then at the same time, the players aren't perfect, and sometimes you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time, so occasionally you will get a defeat in this faction, like any other faction. But why is it that it seems that the Axis faction gets the good end of the matchmaker? Well, for one thing, let me deviate a little and mention a little flaw with the F4JB. I like that plane. I like the way it looks, but it's really sluggish, as you saw there. I mean, as it's intended... Well, let me rephrase that. When it is in its fighter configuration, it's pretty decent. Like, I've been shot down by a F4JB whilst flying my CL-13. But I've also shot down a lot of F4JBs. Mostly, this might sound obvious, but mostly while they were in their attacker or bomber configuration. Like the F4J you see here. Wait for it. It was a little bugged in the replay for some reason, but during the live battle, oh my goodness. Those rockets were probably like 10 meters away. Almost hit me in the face. I was like, oh no! I literally thought he was going to get me with rockets, because I can't even begin to tell you how many times... Yeah, that actually did happen. Got a minor hit on him, and... yeah, feels bad, man. He just eats dirt. No, sorry, not eat dirt. Eats the sand. Oh, come on. This is the desert. There's sand here. Anyway. And I did not know this, because when 1.79 came out, I was mostly doing tanks before I started doing more... Or let me rephrase that. I was playing mostly tanks before I started playing my CL to see how it would fare against the F4JBs. And this is insane. There was this bug or exploit. No, then again, I don't know if you'd call it an... Yeah, I guess you could say it's an exploit, where for some reason, if you were in an F4JB or any plane with good bomb load or a ton of rockets, if you took out all 3 of those bombing points you see behind me, you did not have to destroy the airfield to win the game. You just had to destroy those 3 zones, and you would win. How ridiculous. But thankfully that was fixed in a hot fix the very next day. Or the second day, I can't remember. But at any rate, thankfully it was fixed in a jiffy. But yeah. I forgot what I was going to say for a moment. Let me highlight a little bit on this map while I try to recuperate my thoughts. I always thought this map was a ton of fun. It is fun. But you kind of feel bad. I don't know if they fixed this since I recorded this replay, because I haven't gotten this. I literally haven't gotten this map since I recorded this replay. But I don't know if they ever changed this. But the enemy fighters that spawn in the north have to take off from the airfield, whereas we in the south, we get an air spawn. And to me, that seems like a notable disadvantage for the enemy team, considering that we as our faction already have decent planes. Ah, now I remember now. What I was going to mention is, what in my personal theory, and some of my friends share this too, is why is it that the German faction, or Axis faction, get the best matchmaker? Well, let me put it to you this way. I think it has something to do with the Axis faction not really having any top-tier jets. Or, no, I'm sorry, top-tier jet bombers. So, let me round it up. So, let's start off with the Allies and what top-tier bombers they have. For these purposes, I'm counting both 8.0 and 9.0 jet bombers. 7.0 I'm not counting because 7.0 does not see 9.0 battles, unless of course you're in a squad. And if you do, you're either really good or you're really reckless. But anyway, rounding up the jet bombers that the Allies have as of 1.79, Project X, the Americans have the B-57B jet bomber, which I will admit isn't really the fastest jet bomber in the game, but it's still something. The British have the Canberra Mark 6, I believe, the one with the 4 20mm cannons. The Russians have 3 top-tier jet bombers, 2 IL-28s, including the SH variant, the Tu-14 jet torpedo bomber, which is cool. And then last, but certainly not least, the French have 2 SO-4050 Vautour jet bombers. One of them has 4 20mm at the front, but unless you catch someone off guard or they literally just can't turn, you're not going to get them because, speaking from my own experience flying the Vautour, it does not like to turn. Especially if a fast and nimble single-engine jet fighter can immediately roll a certain direction and then just pull away. Finally, we look at the Axis top-tier jet bombers. Oops! They don't have them! Sorry, I didn't mean to yell there, but I'm serious. The Axis literally have no top-tier jet bombers. I mean, granted, the Germans have the Arados, and the Japanese have the R2Y2s, aka the R2D2s, but they're all 7.0. Well, let me correct myself. The first Arado is 6.7, but that's besides the point. They don't see 9.0 battles. On top of that, Italy doesn't even have a jet bomber in the game at the moment. But yeah. So, what does that mean? It means that the Axis faction can have essentially all fighters. And I understand there's a 4 bomber limit for realistic battles, but 4 players is more than enough to tip the balance. So you could have like 16 versus 16, which is the average player count per team. And on the German, I'm just going to say German because it just rolls off the tongue better. On the German teams, you have all 16 jet fighters of various tiers. Anywhere between the CL-13, the GDR MiG, or the G91, or occasionally the Me-262 C2B. And then you look on the American side, or the Allied side, and they could have up to 4 jet bombers, which some of them can actually be difficult to catch. Like, as you saw earlier, I did have a little difficulty catching up to that Vautour. The Vautour is pretty fast. Formerly, when the Vautours were on the Axis team, the American Sabres struggled to catch the Vautours at max speed. I mean, granted, it could be done, but sometimes by the time you would catch up to the Vautours, they would be in the safety of their airfield, or one of their teammates would intercept you. But then, I believe it was a micro patch during 1.77 that was made for jet realistic battles. They set it to where the Russians wouldn't really play with the Germans anymore, and the French would join the Allies as well. And, as an interesting twist, to tip it all off, the Japanese ended up switching from the Allies to the good old Axis. And it really changed up a lot of things. It was interesting. And I think that tipped the balance a bit more. I mean, already the Axis faction was doing good on its lonesome, and then it has two nations leave, and then a new nation return, or not return, join, and makes it even more interesting. And going back earlier, you did see that right, that IL-28 really did bail out to deny me the kill. I think that's amongst... I'm kind of on the fence on that one. I mean, if you're on the receiving end where you're trying to go after somebody, it really is annoying when they have the audacity to just bail out on you. Because when you think about it, you're doing no trouble but to yourself. How can I say it? You're doing yourself the harm. Because you still have to pay the repair cost. You're just getting on the other guy's nerves. But at the same time... No, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. And in addition to that, if you crash early on in the game like he did, that guy's going to have to wait a full 10 minutes worth of crew lock before he can get into another battle. And sure, maybe he could switch to another nation, but he can't change lineups. All of his vehicles for that lineup will be locked. He can't switch to tanks for that nation, he can't switch planes, he's just stuck there. But at the same time, it is rather annoying when you're playing a low-end vehicle. I mean, the Sabre is literally 200 miles per hour faster than the IL-28. And the IL-28 isn't what it used to be. For one thing, I've mentioned this in the past, but I'll mention it again anyway, but as you may recall, there was a time when in realistic battles, whether it be for air RB or aircraft and tank RB, you had the arcade bomb sight. And I understand they removed that because tankers were complaining about how easy it was for them to get bombed by bombers using that arcade bomb sight. And they removed it. But they really should have only removed it for tank RB. Because some bombers, their bomb sights, I don't know, they're not always accurate or precise. So you could be bombing on target and the bomb lands like either 100 meters ahead or 100 meters behind. It's ridiculous. Even at low altitude in a shallow dive. I don't know, it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, sure, if you're bombing at high altitude trying to bomb bombing points, you can get it right. But if you're trying to bomb even static ground targets, it can be a bit difficult. And on top of that, I remember, because of my IL-28, I have a good record with it. Like, at least like 1,700 ground units destroyed. And that's back when the Korea map was literally let me rephrase that. Almost literally the only map you would get in a jet battle. And that was before they changed up the arrangement of the ground targets from mostly light units to heavy units. I mean, you still have the light units variant of the map from time to time, but most of the time, yes, I almost rammed that 163. Ay. Most of the time you get the one with heavy targets, like with pillboxes. When I used my IL-28, there was a lot of artillery pieces you could go after. And I would typically carry 4 500 kilogram bombs. So I could bomb a bridge, sometimes 2, bomb a couple of pillboxes, and then just use my 23 millimeters to shoot the artillery. And I could even use my tail gunner to shoot the artillery. And you could make an easy 100 grand a game, easy. And I don't know, it seemed like the matchmaker... Well, let me rephrase that. That was back when Russia was almost always part of the German team. So the CL-13s and the GDR MiGs, and the Russian MiGs of course, could easily make quick work of the American Sabres and the Hunters and the Panthers. And I believe there was a time when the Banshee was 8.3 or 8.7, something ridiculous like that. So you saw Banshees a lot. And the Banshees were evil. Were evil. They're not that evil. Um, could easily be taken care of by our 9.0 jets. I, I don't know. A lot of things have changed since I used to play bombers a lot. I mean, I did play with the Votors for a little while, but that was a little different because you used your speed as defense rather than your tail gunners. Something changed where I think it had something to do with the crew skills for the tail gunners. And instead of engaging at like a kilometer or 3,300 feet away, it would be like a quarter of a kilometer or, I kid you not, 1,200 feet away. That's like more than enough for a jet to get their fire on you. Well, any plane basically, because I typically don't engage no farther away than a kilometer or 3,000 feet away. But yeah. Really, I wonder if jets will ever be sorry, not just jets, but bombers of any class could be fine-tuned to where they could better defend themselves. Because at one point, it was ridiculously hard to take out a bomber, but for a long time now, it's just been way too easy. Now, I understand there are some bombers, like the B-29 and the Tu-4, where even in a 9.0 jet, it's rather risky to go up against them. But that's a story for another day, I guess. I don't even want to delve too far into it. But anyway, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this little gameplay video with the CL-13. And yeah, I certainly enjoyed it. I had to re-record the end because the other discussion I was getting into was a bit too long. But I'm glad to be flying planes again. And maybe, just maybe, in the near future, I might be doing some gameplay with Cuisine Royale. And I'll explain more about that game in the near future. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. See you next time. Peace out.